Welcome once again to Cinemaholics. I am John Agroni, back from vacation. I'm the box office columnist for Adam Tickets, head writer of cinemaholics.com, and sometimes I write books. He is a pop culture writer for Cinema Blend, and he also reviews films for Cinemaholics. It is Will Ashen.
Hi, I'm also back.
Yeah, it's been a crazy few weeks, Will. We've missed you, and you have been around, just not in the main show.
Right. Well, I almost was in the Hobbs and Shaw, and the timing didn't work out. And then, last week I wasn't around, so it's good to be back.
Hobbs and Shaw was a great episode, well received by the Cinemaholics community, and we loved having Preeti on. She was fantastic. And last week, in our absence, because again I've been traveling and I am up to my eyeballs in stuff to do at the moment. It's been a more hectic summer than I think I've ever had, Will. But we've made it work, and last week it really worked, because we had, of course, Kimber Myers and Julia Tatey picking up the slack, taking care of business, and they did a whole episode about the kitchen, and so we have to thank them, of course, on the air. Round of applause for everybody filling in, including Sam Noland, who hosted our extra milestone with you, Will. But before we get to that, you can find more episodes, including all the ones that I just mentioned, of Cinemaholics, and our entire archive, going all the way back to our first episode in 2017. You can find all of that on cinemaholics.com, where you can also find written content, bonus podcasts, everything Cinemaholics related you could possibly sink your ears into. And if you'd like to write into the show with a friendly professional email, our email is, as always, cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. Check that out. And last, but probably least, but not to us, our Patreon. Yes, we have a Patreon. We love our patrons. If you would like to check it out, if you're interested in becoming a patron and getting access to bonus episodes and early access and all kinds of extra fun stuff, go to patreon.com/cinemaholics and learn more about that. On to our off topics, because we have quite an episode ahead of us. Because here's the thing, Will. August, it feels like it's been a January sort of month. So much has been dumped on us these last few weeks. I chose the wrong time to take a vacation, as I was telling you off the air. So much has come out, and I don't think you and I have even scratched the surface. And mainly because a lot of these films coming out have been not the best.
Well, that's the thing. You compare it to January, but I feel like September is more the January month, because January is like the island of misfit toys. It's like the movies the studios don't really care about, and it's just like, let's see if they'll make money with the Oscar bait and all that stuff. And August is just like a hodgepodge, like mystery box of movies, where it's just like, we'll just throw everything in here. It's like, we'll have like 5 movies that are all in completely different genres, and it's just like, we hope these movies do well, but we don't really know. Like, we don't know the box office potential for a lot of these movies, so we're just kind of going to throw them in August, see if they do well. If not, no harm, no foul. But yeah, it ends up being a pretty weird month for movie going.
A weird month indeed. We're going to go through some of these films, including the ones we didn't even catch, just to sort of catch up the listeners on what's been coming out. But before we get to that, as I mentioned before, we have a new extra milestone out, and it is a twofer, which is just awesome. So glad you and Sam were able to work that out. I had to miss it, but for this month, I almost said this week's extra milestone. Extra milestone is a monthly podcast, of course. Will, what did you and Sam talk about?
Well, we talked about, like you said, 2 movies, Easy Rider and Do the Right Thing. Both very prominent and influential movies for ultimately different reasons, but both very much worth talking about. And ultimately, we didn't plan this, but it ended up being kind of a posthumous tribute to Peter Fonda, who just recently passed. Yeah. Because he produced the movie in addition to starring in it, so he had a pretty heavy hand in how the film turned out. So, sorry to see him go, but I hope people are able to listen to our episode to pay their tributes and ultimately check out the film as well.
Couldn't agree more. I love the conversation. I thought it was really nice, too, because our episode was so late. We're already working on our August one at the moment and what that film is going to be. But yeah, we were super late on our July episode, so you got 2 movies for the price of 1, which you all deserve, of course. But okay, let's get through all of our off topics. Really, we're just focusing on kind of catching each other up on what's been coming out. What have we been watching? I mentioned The Kitchen. Kitchen came out last week, and it didn't do super well. Not a lot of films did well at the box office these past couple of weeks. I just want to put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to go through all of these films necessarily, but I think the big winner so far has been Hobbs and Shaw. It's kind of lingered in the leaderboards for the past couple of weeks. It's been making good money, kind of a series low for the Fast and Furious franchise post Fast 5. It really hasn't, it's making money akin to like Tokyo Drift and like the first couple Fast and Furious movies, which not great, but I guess we can't be too surprised that, there's spin-off movies. I don't know if the forecast was ever that high. Maybe it was because this is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but Will, you weren't here for Hobbs and Shaw. You did see it. Do you have any drifting thoughts on that movie as we kind of look at it in hindsight?
Yeah, I was not a fan. I found it to be kind of vain in a way that I guess you can kind of say a lot of the Fast and Furious movies are there to feed the egos of their stars. But I feel like with the regular main lane Fast and Furious movies, Vin Diesel really puts his heart into those things, as big and dumb and goofy as they are. There is a lot of love and care put into the goofiness there, and there was something about Hobbs and Shaw that just felt a little too snarky, a little too self-satisfied in a way that didn't really feel like what I tend to enjoy about the Fast and Furious movies. And I also thought the characters themselves were basically paper thin to the point where it just became almost an endless stream of the same type of jokes over and over and over and over and over again, where it's like, we get it. The Rock, you're big and you're really proud of yourself. Jason Statham is shorter and he's British. It's like, we get the jokes, but I know you tended to like the movie a little more than I did. I think you even said it was your favorite Fast and Furious movie.
It is,
which I don't understand at all. But
well, you'd have to listen to that episode of Cinemaholics to kind of get my thought on it. Yeah, Preeti and I both really liked it, and I my argument for it is pretty succinct, but a lot of it has to do with my sort of. I've always found these films to be a little bit lacking in at least one major way, and I just look at Hobbs and Shaw, and I think it's the whole picture. And we just differ on that one, which is a bit of a shame. I was a little bit higher on it. I don't think it's fantastic. I don't think it's amazing necessarily. I just think it's a really solid, all-around good Fast and Furious movies without any major flaws. And I think it's the funniest, which carried a lot of weight for me. But what was your final grade?
C-.
Wow, so low, but okay.
Yeah, it was my second to least favorite, I think, after Too Fast, Too Furious.
I thought you were going to say Fast 5 and blow everyone's mind.
No. Fast 5 is my favorite. I don't know. I tend to like all the Fast and Furious movies from Fast 5 to The Fate of the Furious, which I actually think I liked a little bit more than some people. I don't know. I really got a kick out of that movie. But yeah, this one just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, Fate of the Furious is the one I want to revisit the least. But yeah, that's Hobbs and Shaw. Not a breakout success, but... definitely a film that did okay this summer. And, speaking of which, Toy Story 4 reached $1 billion this past week. So I think now 5 films have hit $1 billion. Or sorry. Okay, so 6 films have hit $1 billion in 2019. 5 of them are Disney films. So that includes Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, Toy Story 4. What am I forgetting? Because it's Aladdin and Lion King. I was like, oh yeah, the remakes. Then the 6th one is Spider-Man Far From Home, which is Disney adjacent. Released by Sony, but obviously a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. So Disney's dominance continues. I don't think that's surprising anyone. But it is kind of interesting because August has been not great. So we mentioned Hobbs and Shaw has been doing whatever. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark did surprisingly well last week. It was like number 2 at the box office. Neither of us have seen it. It dropped significantly this past week. It did better than a lot of the other new wide releases. And for a film that's playing, it's like in over 3,000 theaters. It made about 10 million this week. I don't know. Do you want to catch this one? Scary Stories? I kind of do. And I feel bad that neither of us have seen it and can talk about it.
Yeah, I actually thought you did see it, so I think that might have been Sam who saw it. But yeah, I'm actually trying to see it on Wednesday, so I might be able to talk about it next week. But yeah, I heard it's surprisingly quite good. Like, it was the surprise of August, it seems.
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro produced this, directed by Andre Overdahl, who did a really great film, Troll Hunter.
Oh yeah,
He's a
yeah. It
Norwegian
was him.
director.
I didn't
That's
know.
him. And it's based on a book series that I was never into.
Yeah, I
So
haven't
that's
read
why
them
this
either.
one, yeah, the trailer for this came out. I wasn't all that into it. I know Julia Tatey was more into it. I'm surprised I don't know if she's caught it yet. So hopefully we have her on one of these days if she can catch it before any of us do. But yeah, so Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. It has its fans, and it's been kind of one of the few films to hit wide release lately that's done well. Other than that, so Dora and the Lost City of Gold. This is Paramount. This is Nickelodeon.
Hmm.
Also, super underperformed, I think. So I saw this one. You did
Me
too.
too. Yeah, I got a story about that.
Okay. It opened to $17 million. That's not great for its first weekend in over 3,700 theaters. That's pretty bad. It made less than The Lion King, which has been out for a month. And this past week, it dropped a bit. It made 8 million in its second week. Still made less than The Lion King, which has now been out for 5 weeks. So that tells you a little bit of something. I really like Dora and the Lost City of Gold, though. I thought this was a funny, charming, breezy movie. I saw it with my nieces. They loved it. We were talking about it after the fact. I thought it had some really good bits in it that were pretty good for adults. There's an entire song sequence about some subject matter that I never would have expected to be associated with Dora. But what do you think of that one?
Yeah. Well, I didn't intend on seeing this movie in theaters. Not that I didn't want to. It just was like I don't want to be that guy who goes to the box office and it's like, one for Dora the Explorer, please. But what happened was, so I couldn't get to my house for about 2 hours, and I just basically had 2 hours to kill. And I need to see something at 7 to tide me over until 9. And I had basically seen everything but Angry Birds movie 2 and Dora and the Lost City of Gold, and I was like, well, I guess this moment has come. So I was
Which is
me.
funny too because I've literally seen both of those movies.
Yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't. I was like, I feel weird seeing Dora by myself, but it's also like I don't really want to see a sequel to a movie about an app at 7 o'clock on Thursday by myself. So it's just like, eh. I mainly wanted to see Dora because it was like it's James Bobbin directing and then Nicholas Stoller writing. Nicholas Stoller, I feel like he tends to be at his best either when he makes R-rated raunchy comedies like Forgetting Sarah Marshall, or weirdly when he's adapting children's material. Like he wrote the Captain Underpants movie, he did the Muppets. So yeah, it was kind of like I was like I think I had more expectations for this than a lot of people did, and I felt like it was better and worse than I anticipated at once. I feel like I'm in the minority in that I think I like the first half of it more than the second. I feel like more people would be digging the second half in the jungle than the fish out of water, Crocodile Dundee meets Brady Bunch movie kind of thing that they're doing at the top.
See, I actually agree with you. I think the first half it's more elf, which is probably where most of the good humor lies, with the exception of maybe one or two set pieces. But yeah, the first half of this movie I thought was more interesting. I was a little bit more invested in what was going on with Diego and high school and the fish out of water from that perspective, rather than putting these more straight laced, kind of boring characters into the
Mhm.
jungle where Dora's in her element. I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought that the second half it needed a little bit more juice.
Yeah, it just kind of got a little repetitious in the second half to the point where we should also mention that's where what's his name? Eugenio Debritz, is that how you
Yeah,
pronounce it?
more or
He
less.
Yeah, I figured I didn't get that quite right, but yeah, I think he's a producer on the film as well, so he gives himself a fairly prominent role. And I feel like he's a good guy, but I haven't really seen anything that really wowed me from him yet. Maybe I just haven't seen the right film, but I thought he just kind of overtook the film at certain points in a way that was like, this isn't really your movie, dude.
I think that's true. Well, he's such a larger than life actor. So
Right.
Eugenio Derbez, he's probably one of the most famous Latin actors, in the world, at least at the moment. I mean, and he's in a lot of, I think, let's see. So live action, because we don't want to just do, I know animated stuff.
Mhm.
He's been in plenty of, because he's done a lot of
Well,
voiceover.
the big breakover was Instructions Not Included, right? That was the one he starred and directed that became a huge international success.
That
That
I don't know if that's really the marker. I mean, he was in so many films before then, but I guess to your point, he was pretty big as a Latin American voice actor for
okay,
films like like the Shrek movies. I think he did a bunch of those, but he did
okay.
like but he did the Spanish version and all of that. I think I remember I watched Mulan in Spanish when I was a kid, and I remember he voiced Mushu. I don't
Oh,
know
really?
why I remember that. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I guess Instructions Not Included, that's probably true. I think Beverly Hills Chihuahua is something that
Okay, he's in that.
probably the first live action role I can remember him from. Yeah, he has kind of a small bit in that. He has, I think Jack and Jill. He's popped up all over the place. Book of Life though. Oh, but that's after Instructions Not Included. He voices a character in that.
No, wait, Book of Life's that's before. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah, that's 2014, and then Instructions Not Included is 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And then, other than
right.
that, I mean, How to Be a Latin Lover and Overboard were supposed to be his like big entries into like American cinema.
Well, that's
And
what
then,
I'm talking about.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. To your point,
right. That's what I mean. Like, I feel like as a like American lead actor, it was Instructions Not Included that really kind of made him. That's what I mean, like an international star, where he was like able to be at the forefront of these Hollywood productions in a way that he wasn't before. But I mean, to your point, yeah, he was a huge star before that, but this is what made him like very, very huge.
yeah, he didn't wow me in this movie, but I thought he was all right. I thought it was nice. He's like a nice to have for this
Yeah,
movie. The person who stood out to me, of course, was Dora herself. I think
yeah, she's
Isabel
great.
Moner absolutely brings this film to glorious life, and she is just a fascinating actress. I think right now, I could. Yeah, Transformers last night, Sicario, Day of the Soldado. Those are the two kind of blots on her film record at the moment. Not that she's bad in either, but Instant Family was when I remember thinking to myself that she could really do something great with, just her presence, with her voice, not her voice range, sorry, her just acting range. Because I know she has voiced a character or two before. But in this movie, yeah, she is Dora. Like she nails it.
Hmm. Yeah, she does. I'm trying to think. There's another film like that where an actor was really able to get into the animated part. I maybe think of Scooby Doo with Matthew Lillard.
I was gonna say Velma and Lindsay Weir, but you know me.
Wait, who's Lindsay Weird?
Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched Freaks and
Yeah.
Geeks, but
So, sometimes, Will, sometimes you say these things, I
yeah,
feel like just to hurt me.
right. I the funnier thing too is I think I have it on DVD. I still haven't watched it. I'm trying to
Oh
see if I
man.
can find it on my shelf. I don't see it, but yeah, no, I thought she was great, and I definitely think she helped to make the comedy I think a little more consistent because I
Yeah.
think the material was kind of hit or miss a lot of the time, but like her delivery and her enthusiasm for the material and just playing this part was really infectious. And I think that helped a lot to really sell this movie as far as the kind of out of the box approach of doing the like I guess Toy Story 3 thing where the characters growing up with the audience
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah, it is kind of doing that.
yeah, Dora's like a Gen Z kind of thing. Like it was a little before, or sorry, a little bit after my time. Like I remember it was getting popular just
Right.
when I was like getting out of elementary school, so it was like not really my scene. But I
I
remember
think
like
it
for
came out in like 2001, right? So like
something
now,
like that,
and
yeah,
it's Nick Jr. It was way past our time.
yeah. I mean, certainly for you, and I mean, it was just like out of my time. Maybe for like Sam and some younger audiences, I don't know if they had a stronger connection to this character. But yeah, it was just always kind of seen as like a very, very kiddie thing. But it had, good morals and it was doing a good thing, teaching kids to read and all this stuff. So there was nothing really you could complain about. And but yeah, it was just like I think the idea of growing up with this character and like what it's trying to say about growing up and learning to, find your maturity, I think it's touching, but doesn't quite hit me as hard because I'm not in that age demographic. I'm a little older than
Sure.
that now.
It also doesn't mesh at all with like the whole we're explorers, not treasure hunters kind of weird thing they shoe in there.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah. So it's kind of going for like a Toy Story 3 thing where like that hit me at the right time. That was like the right age where I grew up with the characters. This was like a little bit after me. So I can't have that same emotional connection. But it seems like a lot of people are getting that based on the reviews I've been
Yeah, I think so.
seeing, which is good. I like that. I like that it's kind of able to be out of the box like that and not just be generic and kind of shallow as a Dora the Explorer live action movie. It's trying to be something a little meatier, but at the same time, it feels like the weird stuff is kind of like at a halfway point where it feels like the weird stuff they got in was like what Nick approved. It's like it seems like Nicholas Stoller and James Brolin, if they had like full reign, they would have made a really really weird movie. And I feel like Nickelodeon's like, hey, this is our brand. Like we can't do that much with it, but at the same time, like what they do get in this movie that is weird feels even weirder as far as like you imagining Nickelodeon being like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like we
Yeah,
can
like
have
Ren and Stimpy kind of
yeah.
stuff that sneaks in there.
Well, I just mean like like not to give anything away, but it's like it's fine that Dora tries to murder a man with a yo-yo. Like that's fine.
That
It's
fits.
just like
That fits the
yeah,
Nickelodeon brand.
I guess so.
We live in a Legend of Korra world, which I know you haven't seen that show, but there's
Yeah,
murder in some Nickelodeon material. It's fine.
sure. It just kind of weird to me. There was another example of this. Oh, Peter Rabbit, where it's like a
Oh
there's something
yeah.
about these past 2 years with like popular children's characters attempting murder
I
in
think
kids' films.
studios have a weird like tendency to overvalue what is edgy and what isn't. Um, I have to say with this movie, it does hit a sweet spot for me because I was way past my time, but my niece was born when I was 13. She grew up on Dora, so like Dora was the kind of thing I would watch with her all the time.
Okay,
And so I had a little bit of a full circle moment because I have two other nieces who are much younger than her, who are 5 and 7, and my vacation was hanging out with them for a week, which was really great. But we saw this movie together along with Angry Birds 2, and they were in love with it, and it was a nice little moment because I've been able to enjoy Dora with the children and my family for all of these years. And so
yeah,
even though it's not like a Toy Story connection, like I have no sort of like direct connection to Dora, I do through like my de facto
hmm
not children but nieces, right? So
yeah,
that kind of worked for me on that level because they found the weird stuff in this movie absolutely hilarious.
okay,
There were some things in here that I thought were super out there. So Ava Longoria's in this, Michael Pena, they play her parents, and them like explaining what a rave is was just like a delightful scene. There's stuff like that. There's like sort of good dinosaur-esque tripping sequence
I
that
like that part.
absolutely won me over all the way. And yeah, I know we're doing kind of like a impromptu mini review of this thing, but I do think it's valuable that we did both see this, and I really enjoyed it for the most part. It's a little shabby. It's got some things to it that were a little forced, a little out there in a way that I wasn't either expecting or that appreciative of. But yeah, I was into it basically the whole way through. It was like a kind of like a B- movie for me. What about you?
Yeah, I was about right there. I was between like a B- and a C+, but I think a lot of the charm here really makes it easy to give it a B-, just because what works here is really enjoyable and really sweet. And I do think having James Bobbin and Nicholas Stoller involved did give it a little bit of that extra punch that helped us stand out beyond some of the kind of more mediocre Nickelodeon movies we've gotten. So yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I don't think it quite hit me as hard, but I like the idea that you're able to enjoy this movie precariously through your niece's eyes, which sounds pretty sweet.
I think you mean vicariously
Sorry,
because I
that's
think
what I mean. Yeah.
precariously. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like a dangerous application of that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
But no, I the only critical dislike I have of this film, the only thing that just gnawed at me for hours after watching it to this day, really, if we're being honest, is the fact
Sure.
that Swiper the Fox is portrayed as sort of a dream sequence character at the very beginning of this movie. It's
hmm
like, oh, it's all in their head.
Yeah.
And, I'm not really giving anything away that doesn't get revealed pretty early on in the film. But at one point, it just turns out Swiper the Fox is a talking fox who wears a mask and everyone can see him and accept that he exists. And it's like one of the weirdest logical leaps of the film because there's also something involving whether or not Boots can really talk. And it's like,
hmm
well, if Swiper can talk, why would anyone be surprised that Boots can talk? You can understand my dilemma, Will. Like I was freaking out about this.
Yeah. No,
Because
I
if
like
I
this.
can't explain it to myself, then how am I going to explain it to our children?
Yeah. I don't know. I thought to me like that was like what you're talking about with Boots. I thought that was kind of the joke is that like they could accept the walking talking fox, but they couldn't accept Boots being a talking little more animated figure. So I don't know, something about that was amusing to me. But I do agree with you that the logic behind Swiper's character, also he's CG'd like Scooby Doo in 2002 level,
Oh,
which I
yes.
found way more distracting than any of the logic jumps. Was that like his? I don't know. For some reason, like the special effects are like okay throughout the movie, except for Swiper and Boots isn't great, but like Boots is a little more better rendered, I guess, than Swiper,
But
who just looks
the
bad.
design of Boots is absolutely horrifying.
Oh, it is for
Every
sure.
time he was on screen, I was so happy when he would disappear for large swaths of the
Uh,
film,
eh,
which I feel bad to say. Also, how do you get Benicio del Toro to voice Swiper the Fox? How do you get Danny Trejo to show up as Boots? Some of the stuff in this movie, I'm more impressed with the casting than I am anything else.
yeah. Well, I actually thought Benicio del Toro was pretty funny. He still has, I'd say, the funniest line in the movie, which is I think the first joke of the film, which to me is the biggest laugh I got out of the film. So to each their own. But the thing that disturbed me was so what didn't disturb me was I was very happy to see my favorite Dora character, the map, got to have 2 appearances in the film, which I was not expecting at all. I was like,
Your favorite character.
this is yeah. If I have a favorite Dora character, it's like I don't think Map's gonna get in this because I was like, how are they gonna fit talking, anthropomorphic? I guess he wouldn't be anthropomorphic because it's not human like, but he has a face and he can talk. And I was like, there's no way they
which
can.
is human like, but okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. But I was like, there's no way they're gonna have him. It's like, hey, Map's here, and he talks to the camera. It's like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And then they cut to the backpack talking, and I was like, get that thing away from me. That was horrifying. Talking
Backpack is
backpack. It stared at my soul, and I was like, I don't want this. Get this out of here. And I'm glad it's gone.
See, there's 2 kinds of people in this world. I'm the backpack person, you're the map person. We just have to accept our differences and move on.
I like backpack in the show. It's just seeing him as a CG talking character staring at the center frame of the camera I was not about that.
You're
at all.
explaining what I liked about it, but okay. So, Dora and the Lost City of Gold, like I mentioned before, hasn't been taking the box office by storm, which is a little sad. It's a film that takes more risks and it does stranger things, and I feel like it just got a little bit ignored, which kind of bums me out. It's a movie that cost $49 million to make, and worldwide it's only made 44.6, which hopefully it's going to make up some of that ground internationally. It's only made 10 million internationally, and I just don't think it's really come out in a lot of places yet. Like, it hasn't come out in any Central American markets that I know of, and hopefully that's where it's going to grind its teeth, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Other films that have come out recently, since we got to move on from Dora, I feel like that could have been the main episode for us if we had done an episode last week, for sure. But yeah, moving on. So I mentioned, The Kitchen didn't do super well. Neither of us saw it. I have no intention to see The Kitchen.
No, I saw The Kitchen.
You saw The Kitchen too? Oh, for some reason I missed that. I have no intention to see this because Kimber and Julia did not like this film. They were pretty negative on it. Were you as well?
Yeah, but not too much. I feel like the reviews were pretty harsh. I thought it was just kind of a mixed bag movie. Like, I thought some of it was pretty appealing as far as like the performances. Like, I thought Elizabeth Moss, as per usual, was really good. Domhnall Gleeson has a really strong part in here. I think whenever they're on screen, it works. Bill Camp is also really good in here, as per usual. But it's just kind of a messy film ultimately, in a way that I was disappointed by, because the pacing of it's really bad. Like, it has like moments where you're like, oh, it's like 2 weeks past, and you're like, it's been 6 months. It's like, what? And like, it just doesn't flow in any particularly good way. Like, I didn't know where scenes were going or like how long they were going to extend for, and then the movie just kind of ends in a sort of unclimactic fashion, which suggests that it just never really got a strong hold of what it was trying to do. It also doesn't really have a lot of style, which I was disappointed by for a New York 70s crime film. But yeah, there's stuff in it I liked. Like I said, I'm not quite as negative on it as some people were, but it is a bit of a bummer that it wasn't quite able to work as many people were hoping it would.
Right. Critics savaged this film. Did not do well at all. And with critics or with audiences, because this film was only made $11.7 million after 2 weeks, and it cost $38 million to make. This is a Warner Brothers movie by way of New Line, and yeah, I mean, for an R-rated film, it was a big risk to make it cost that much in the first place, but you do have some pretty big talent here. This is definitely a big disappointment for Warner Brothers as of now, and I still have no interest to see it. But yeah, maybe on a plane. That's probably when I'll get around to it.
That's probably the best way.
Yeah, from what I can tell, it just doesn't seem to be my jam.
If you do see anything, I would definitely recommend some of the scenes with Domhnall Gleeson in the bathtub. I won't want to give away too much, but they're probably the funniest scenes in the film.
Scene.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
There was also The Art of Racing in the Rain, which this is a Fox film that Disney kind of quietly released. I've heard it's kind of just like Marley and Me, but with the guy from This Is Us and Heroes. Milo, I never know how to pronounce his last name. But I haven't heard great things about this film as well. Yeah, I'm not going to lean on you in that time of need. But yeah, this is a film that, I missed my screening because of vacation things. And I forgot to say, like, literally, this is what I meant by, like, I chose the wrong week to take a vacation because my screenings for Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Good Boys, and Art of Racing in the Rain all happened within my vacation. So I missed absolutely everything. But from what I can tell, at least with those two, at least with Art of Racing in the Rain, I didn't miss much. What have you heard about this film? Because I don't think you saw it either, right?
Yeah, I didn't see it either. Similar to you, for whatever reason, the week I was gone, like I haven't had as many screenings in my area, unfortunately. But that week it was just like, Will's gone, so let's have 3 screenings this week. So I missed Hobbs and Shaw, Art of Racing in the Rain, and Dora. And obviously I saw Hobbs and Shaw and Dora at a later date, but never got around to Art of Racing in the Rain just because it didn't seem that interesting to me. Like, I love dogs, but I don't know, it just didn't really appeal to me in any particular way. And I've heard there's a couple moments that get really weird, but other than that, it's a pretty genial, harmless but nothing substantial or meaningful film with a dog voiced by Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I don't know what we would really expect from that. But we don't know what the budget for this was. Estimates are pretty wide ranging. It could have cost anywhere between $18 and $50 million. We don't have an official figure. It's made 19.3 so far, almost all of that domestically. So not a huge flop or anything, but definitely not a big hit. It's sort of falling into that trend we've seen of Fox films post Disney merger have just really floundered these last few months. And it's the thing that's worrying me the most about it, because we've seen it, of course, with Dark Phoenix, Stuber, so many others. The thing that worries me the most about it is Ad Astra, a film that I know a lot of us have been looking forward to that got delayed. And this is the Brad Pitt goes to space to deal with his Tommy Lee Jones issues, his daddy issues, as it were. And the trailer for it is pretty good. And by all accounts, it looks like a pretty interesting, maybe an Oscar type movie, and yet it's a Fox movie. And so far, I think Disney and Fox are like 0 for 7 or 8 at this point. But hopefully I'm reading too much into this, and that's not really the case. There's also Brian Banks, which I heard was pretty good. Didn't catch it. Didn't break the top 10 at the box office last week. Peanut Butter Falcon hit limited release, which we're going to talk about this week. This is all like last week. And yeah, I'm still not even covering like all of the wide releases, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. The Farewell, which we actually had a listener request us to talk about on the show at some point, and we are discussing maybe doing a bonus episode about The Farewell. I know I've talked about it on this show before, and I don't remember which episode it was, but I'd love to have a deeper conversation about it. I especially want to see it again. So stay tuned for that. That's a success of a film for sure. I don't know, Will, if you've looked at the box office for it, but this film did not cost a lot to make. I forget what the production budget was, but probably only a couple million. And this movie is made like $12.8 million. It's managed to land into the top 10, if only because the competition has just done so much worse. And it's made $12.8 million, but it's literally the entire time it's been in limited release. Like it's been playing in like not that many theaters. I think at one point it made like $350,000 in 4 theaters, like unbelievable stuff. And then, when it got up to like 700 theaters, it made over 2 million in one weekend. So this is a film that I'm very happy to see succeed in ways that other limited release indie films just simply have not. And, I think this one as an A24 film and Last Black Man in San Francisco are pretty good examples of like how A24 is just really good at just releasing these movies and making a profit in ways that, we haven't had a chance to talk about Annapurna all of that drama going on where they're filing for bankruptcy apparently. And they have just botched film after film. I think most notably Booksmart earlier this summer, which, Good Boys just came out, and that's done well at the box office. Same genre, same feel, style of movie, and that movie has done like more in like a weekend than Booksmart did its entire run, I think. And if Beale Street Could Talk, I mean, what in the world did they do? They completely messed up that release of a film that should have just been the Oscar film of the season, and barely anybody saw it, despite how good it was. And then Sisters Brothers, a film I still haven't even seen, which I've heard is fantastic. But like, how am I supposed to watch it? It's just one of those things where like the buzz isn't there, because I think Annapurna has just really struggled to just to bring these movies to people who want to see them. And I'm really bummed out about their struggles right now, but I'm also sort of a little skeptical on like whether or not they deserve to be saved a little bit. I know a little bit of the details behind it, but I don't want to speak too recklessly.
I think what's going to happen, I mean, I don't have any like insider info about this, but I imagine that they're probably going to hold back on some of their producing films. Like, I don't think they're going to make as many original films under their studio, but I think they're going to continue distributing them. And I hope if that's the case, that they're going to, like you said, learn some lessons about how properly to build buzz and to release these movies in a way that people see them. Because it seems like, I don't know, maybe not so much with Booksmart, because I think they did try to build some buzz for that. But like, if Beale Street Could Talk, and then with Where'd You Go, Bernadette, it just seems like they didn't really spread the word that much. I mean, we love Richard Linklater films here, and I forgot that Where'd You Go, Bernadette was coming out this weekend. So I have no
literally,
clue how...
I don't want to breeze past this. Well, you're in the movie. You're in maybe. Where'd You Go, Bernadette? Not maybe. People have seen you and have told you that you are in this movie, and you didn't even watch it. A Richard Linklater film came out this weekend. Neither of us saw it. Richard Linklater is probably my favorite director. You're in the film, and neither of us is talking about it this week. How ridiculous is that? I can't get over it. It's too crazy not to fly off the handle about.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I think what happened there was like they had like what 3, maybe 4 different release dates at this point. So people didn't even know if this release date was going to stick. And like people have seen the trailer, but they're like, I don't know when this is coming out. Like, is this going to come out in the fall? Is this going to come out in the summer? And then just like, they're just like, oh yeah, we're going with that August release date. And then like, it just felt like the week of, they just decided to like let people know that, but they didn't really build the buzz for it. So, I mean, as disappointing as it is, like, not that I expected this movie to be a huge hit based on the reviews and...
Well, the trailers look terrible.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, I mean, even if it is like a lesser Linklater film, it still feels like, given the cast and, the popularity of the book, that they could have done at least 5 million or maybe 8 million, but 3.4 million is just terrible. And that comes down the Annapurna, unfortunately.
Absolutely. It is abysmal. So yeah, as you mentioned, Where'd You Go, Bernadette? It released in 2,400 theaters. Where did she go? Where did the time go?
Yeah.
Cotton-eyed Bernadette. And
yeah. Well, I'm keeping on the lookout.
I'm as disappointed as you are that we have not found her, because audiences have been looking, and they clearly have not been willing to pay admission to bring her home. There's a bunch of movies we are going to talk about this week, probably in more full terms. So I'm gonna avoid talking about Blinded by the Light, which that debuted at number 10 at the box office this weekend, and also not doing super well. There was 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. This is the sequel to 47 Meters Down. I didn't see that film. Were you a fan?
Wait, 47 Meters Down, the first one?
Yeah.
Or the sequel? Yeah, I talked about it on I talked about the first one.
I thought you did. I just couldn't remember, because how many shark movies have come out since we started doing Cinemaholics? You tell me.
Like 4 or 6?
At least 6. Yeah, it's been a lot.
The Shallows, 47 Meters Down.
The Meg.
What was it? The Meg. Yeah, I was trying to remember the title of that.
Who knows how many Sharknadoes?
Right, and then Crawl doesn't count. That's an alligator crocodile movie. But yeah, your point stands.
But yeah, I almost said Finding Dory. 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. Same thing. I don't know why my mind went there. But did you see I don't think you saw the sequel, right?
No, this is another one I just completely forgot about. Like I keep
Right.
seeing the billboards for it, and I'm just like, oh, I guess it's coming out this summer.
Who was
And I just
excited
didn't know
about it?
when. I,
Because we
I
would
don't
have
know.
maybe we would have been excited about it, but it's like they didn't even try.
I mean, I think I was fairly supportive, or at least decently positive on the first one, but I found it to be kind of disposable romp. I don't really see what the desire was to make a sequel. I don't think the first one did particularly hot, but this is like what that the fake looking studio entertainment
Entertainment
studios or something.
Studios, which sounds like something out of Simpsons. Yeah, they did
Right.
Hostels. Hostels was a kind of a slow burn of a movie. I didn't really care for all that much. It's their second most profitable movie, I believe. I think 47 Meters Down was like their big hit. So that came out 2 years ago. Big summer movie. I mean, that was a June movie. Like this sequel is like an August movie, I think, in every sense of the
Yeah.
word. And even though it
Mhm.
came out in more theaters, I mean, it doesn't have nearly the same momentum. I think 47 Meters Down was a surprise hit. I mean, it made like, I think almost $50 million.
Oh
But yeah,
wow.
Entertainment Studios, yeah, and then 47 Meters Down in Cage has made like eight, in its first
Sure.
weekend, which, yeah, it's probably, it'll be lucky if it breaks like 25 in its entire run, if that. So yeah, 47 Meters Down, much more successful film. Hostels did pretty well too, considering it didn't have a super wide release. Chappaquiddick, that's a film that I don't think either of us saw, right?
Nope. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it. I heard it was actually good though.
I heard it wasn't, so that's why I kind of skipped it. Hurricane Heist, which I heard was kind of a guilty pleasure movie that people liked.
Oh no, it was bad.
Replicas was like the Keanu Reeves film that people have decided we're not going
Oh,
to
I heard
talk
that was
about
bad.
it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard it was terrible. Friend Request, didn't see that.
that was
Um,
bad.
th- there's a couple other films that I'm forgetting, but yeah, Entertainment Studios doesn't have a huge repertoire. I think that's a pretty decent breakdown of where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of seem to be making, for lack of a better word, and I don't mean this dismissively, but kind of trashy movies, with the exception of Hostels
I was about
and
to say
another one.
Hostels. Yeah, yeah, that's a little bit more serious, like Christian Bale. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's up its own ass.
but oh, okay, I haven't seen it. That's a Scott Cooper one, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't see that, but yeah, the other ones are kind of genre films. They're like B movies essentially, from what I can gather. Like 47 Years Down, Friend Request. A lot of just kind of like genre films that seems like I guess they just want to kind of lean on that, but maybe pick up something more high profile, like a midnight screening at some film festival type movie that they could push up into a wide release. But yeah, I don't know, nothing there they've produced besides the original 47 Years Down has really suited my fancy, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. Moving right along, and sorry for those of you listening who are like, man, I wish you guys would review films. Here's the problem: there's so many films. Narrowing it down has been quite a challenge. So we're just trying to catch up here, and we're almost there. There's also the
Yeah.
Angry Birds movie 2. Now, I saw this film. This is Sony Pictures Animation. It made $10 million, opened at number 4 at the box office, which number 4 sounds pretty all right. But
Yeah.
yeah, considering, I mean, you just got to look at it like 14 million. I mean, it's made 45 million worldwide so far. It hasn't made back its production budget despite being out for almost a week now. And I don't know, as an animated film, yeah, it's just continuing that trend, I think, of sequels to animated films that did pretty well, but have just really failed to launch. I think like what the first Angry Birds film, which I didn't see, by the way. I saw the sequel, didn't catch the first Angry Birds. I feel like I didn't need to. But the funny thing about that is the first Angry Birds movie cost a little bit more money to make. It had a $73 million budget. This film has 65. However, this movie, the first Angry Birds movie, made $352 million worldwide when it came out in the summer of 2016. Angry Birds 2, I mean, do you even think that's possible? Like, is it even possible for a film that's at 45 million so far at the very end of summer? School's back in session. Are we really expecting Angry Birds movie 2 to get anywhere close? Could it even get to like 150 million? I think even that would be a huge stretch, depending on its international numbers. I'm just baffled right now by how
Uh,
poorly these animated films are doing. It's so alarming to me.
Not only animated films, but it seems like all the animated sequels, like you said, have been underperforming. So
Right.
I don't know what it is. I guess maybe just families are like, we've seen this already. We have the original on DVD. I guess they don't feel that need to spend the big bucks to see the continuations on the big screen, or they're just assuming that they're going to hit Netflix. Which, I mean, to be fair, Netflix has a huge roster of family movies, so maybe they're just catching wise and being like, it'll be on Netflix one of these days. The kids, they can wait. Like
Yeah.
they are distracted watching what do they got now? Rocco's Modern Life reboot.
Yeah,
And
Invader
Invader
Zim has a movie on Netflix. No, Will,
Yeah.
you've touched on something that I think is so true. So true. These animated films, these sequels, because of Netflix and because of Disney Plus and all these streaming services, audiences have just been fine-tuned to believe that their animated films with their family are at home, unless it's a Pixar, and they can't wait for the Pixar Disney animated film. We'll see about Disney animated, actually, because the big test for that studio is going to be later this year with Frozen 2, which I think is going to be more of an event film. But yeah, Toy Story 4, event film. It's Toy Story. How to Train Your Dragon 3, not an event film at all. People just did not show up for that movie. Lego Movie 2, the second part, a film a lot of us thought was going to be a big early hit of the year, didn't do well. People I know who watch movies all the time with their kids didn't watch that film. They watched it like way later on streaming. And yeah, I think you're touching upon something that maybe we might have missed at the beginning of the year when we were speculating on how some of these films would do. And that's that, yeah, animated sequels just aren't feeling like big event films at the moment unless they're made by Disney. And that part of that is probably the power of the Disney brand, which we can complain about. Some people want to celebrate it. It's a confusing time. I'm not sure how I feel necessarily about this trend and what it means and whether or not this is just going to be the norm. I mean, you can even have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I have a feeling by the time we hit 2020 is going to be considered one of the best animated and superhero films of the decade. And that film didn't make that much money. I think it made about as much money worldwide as A Bug's Life did in the late 90s. And that's just depressing to me, and I wanted to get that off my chest.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is depressing. Although I wonder how much that is impacted by people being so accustomed to Spider-Man movies being in theaters that they're just like, oh, it's just another Spider-Man movie. But then
Except
again,
Far
like,
From Home has made $1 billion.
Yeah, I was about to say. So I don't know what it is that I don't know. I don't know. There's also this reputation, I guess, that people feel like anime movies and they're not Pixar, like, kid stuff. So general audiences, I guess, don't feel this need to see them without like their kids. They're just like, oh, I don't need to see that's that's for the baby stuff, which is terrible and it's annoying. But there's I don't know something to be said about that. I guess where certain audiences are more willing to see a live action movie than an animated one, even if the animated film is as highly regarded as Into Spider-Verse was.
And even if it's an original film, not based on any, characters like or comics or anything like that. Missing Link, one of the biggest flops of the year. And Ugly Dolls, another one of the biggest flops of the year. I mean, those were just to what you're saying. I think that there's something about the animated medium, like the medium of animation, that is playing a factor into this. And I'm just confused about what it is. It reminds me of what happened with hand-drawn animation in the early 2000s and then how that just totally fell off the map because Pixar just changed everything with their animation. And I wonder, Pixar's evolved a lot since those days, and I think it's fair to say their movies are more than that artistic style. They're totally event films for other reasons beyond the look and feel of them. And I just wonder if other studios, because like audiences have been giving them chance after chance, mainly with DreamWorks. I watched that trailer. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a new movie coming out about a girl who finds it's called Abominable.
Yeah.
And it's excruciating to watch. And this is DreamWorks. This is a studio that has made some of the best animated films of the modern era. And I'm looking at what they're putting out with this, and it's like, my word, this looks like this does not look up to their caliber. Even considering some of the terrible films they've put out, like I don't know, Home. What are the worst films of like 20 whatever year that was? I don't know. Well, I'm just a little. I'm feeling disheartened right now because I feel like something's happening to animation and I don't like it. I don't want the only good animated films, or the only successful ones, I should say. I don't want it them just to be Disney. Like, there's more to animation than what Disney and Pixar can come up with.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like it's not even that the animation is dying per se, because I mean, when we're talking about Netflix, like they have a huge roster of original animated properties that they do, and I'm assuming they do well because they put them out at a pretty regular clip. But yeah, like you're saying, there's something about people not feeling the need to see these movies in theaters, which is getting pretty depressing at this point. If that medium, which has been, for several years before this, a very profitable way of making movies, because these aren't cheap, and so, but we have them often at a regular clip because they have traditionally done well. So this year has been kind of depressing to see that they haven't been doing too well. But then again, it hasn't really been an extremely good year for animation either. So it's kind of a give and take, I feel.
I think we reached like peak like animated movie success in 2016. I think we haven't had a good year since. I mean, with Zootopia, Moana, Kubo and the Two Strings. I would even, I think, was the Minions movie that year? Maybe it was 2016. I might be wrong about that, but
no, 2015.
That was 2015. Mm-hmm. So regardless, like 2016 was such a good year for films, like across the board. Secret Life of Pets, that was the Illumination film from 2016. That movie made over $1 billion. But since then, something has just totally dropped off, right? Finding Dory, 2016, one of the biggest animated films of all time, was that same year. We just hit such a pinnacle, and since then, it just hasn't been great. And the first Angry Birds, I forgot about that. That was 2016. Now we have the Angry Birds movie 2. I saw this. It was, it was okay. I thought it was kind of funny. It had some funny stuff in it. There were some set pieces I thought were hilarious. There were other jokes in here that were extremely forced. I mean, it's one of those films where a lot of the jokes are pop culture gags, are just really dated, like already dated, and the film's been out for a week, that kind of thing. Yeah. There's nothing really to grab onto with this movie. It'll make kids laugh. It's not too long. It's got some good voice acting in it, but I don't know, the characters aren't very memorable. The story is not very unique or compelling. It's really kind of what the first movie was, from what I can tell, where there's this really angry bird named Red, and in the first movie he like becomes like the savior of all the Angry Birds, and in this new movie he's worried he's going to lose his fame and he's going to be alone. And it's really like, because I think that was part of the first one, is that he was alone, he didn't have any friends, and the second one he's like, I don't want to be alone and not have any friends. It's like very, I don't know, it's dealing some of the issues of insecurity that I don't think were really told in a way that was very interesting, but it has pretty good jokes. There's some funny stuff in here. I think the shining light of this film are the 3 little birds who go on their own little sort of like, Scrat adventure, like courtesy of Ice Age. That I did think that was full of laughs, but yeah, other than that, I mean, this is not a movie I would say like this is a movie that, like, yeah, if I saw this at home in a living room, I'd get the same effect. I don't think the theatrical experience adds much, and ultimately overall, it's like a C+ for me. And I'm more bummed out about the larger conversation about animated films in general than I am this one in particular. Sure. It's sort of what we all expected, right? I don't think any of us were thinking Angry Birds movie 2 was going to be amazing, but I do think some people were pleasantly surprised and saying this one was better than the first, which again, I don't know, maybe it is, but low bar, I think, is what we're dealing with here.
Well, it is interesting though that we are talking about animated films. We haven't addressed the fact that The Lion King 2019, which I know we've debated is whether or not it's animated or not, but there was a report a week or two ago that said that it is technically, quote unquote, the highest grossing animated film of all time, which came out this summer. But there is, I guess, something to be said about what is now the highest grossing film or animated film of all time is a film that people can't even decide whether or not it's animated.
Right. And it stole the throne from Incredibles 2, which is vastly superior film.
Yeah.
Very, very bummed out about that. So, yeah, that Lion King, we could go all day about some of these films in the box office, because that's another interesting box office story, how that has just absolutely obliterated everything. But all we have left to do is sort of go through the films we did watch, the ones we're ready to talk about here. And as we go through this, I don't think we owe any of these films like a very long review. We've only both seen one of them. So let's start with that. Good Boys. Good
Yep.
Boys was directed by Gene Subnitsky, who this is his first film directing. He co-wrote
Mhm.
the script with Lee Eisenberg, and yeah, I don't know much about this director. I know that he has some things to do with
Uh,
television.
Year
He
one.
directed. Well, yeah, Year One is not a movie I'm all that into. I
I
saw
know
it
it's terrible.
just once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know he wrote that with who? Harold, was it Harold Ramis? He wrote that film with.
Well, no, Harold Ramis directed it. That was his last film as a director. But whoever his writing partner is, Lee something is who he wrote
Lee
it with.
Eisenberg.
They also,
For
yeah,
some reason, I thought Harold Ramis helped with the screenplay. That must be totally
yeah.
wrong.
Not officially at least. I don't think he was credited for it, but I could be wrong. It's not like I often think about year one,
Hmm,
and I choose
strange.
not to. But I also think they're behind the one of the Ghostbusters screenplays that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe
but it didn't come along. It was going to
the
be Ghostbusters
yeah
3.
yeah the one that I believe Bill Murray audibly like through the phone faxed up, telling them or sorry not faxed paper shredded like over the phone to tell him that
Hmm,
he wasn't going to do it. I believe
yeah,
it was that script that he was
that's funny.
doing that for. So he was not a fan of that one.
They
uh,
were also behind Bad Teacher, the Cameron Diaz Justin Timberlake movie, and I
yeah.
think they're producing the sequel. I didn't watch Bad Teacher. Actually,
What?
wait, I did watch Bad Teacher. I totally forgot that I watched that.
Mhm.
And man, I had that was such a nothing movie to me. But yeah,
Yeah, Jake Kasdan, the director of Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, did that.
but yeah. Um,
Uh, Son of Lawrence Kasdan, who made one of your favorite movies.
that's right.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm much more impressed with the duo's work on The Office. I think they've worked on some of the best episodes ever of The
Mhm.
Office. First ones that come to mind, I think The Fight, which is a season 2 episode. They did Scott's Tots, which I still think about the cringe in that episode. They're a great writing duo. I just think that with film they just haven't quite made the same leap necessarily. Now, all that said, this film, Good Boys,
Mhm.
I think it would be more appropriate to associate like Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg are the producers here. It's under
Yep.
Point Grey, and I really get the sense that their creative fingerprints are on this. I don't know if you would agree.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
The premise is that it's super bad for tweens, right? So 11, 12 year
Right.
olds. They're sixth
I was gonna say.
graders, and it's the same structure, right? There's a party that they all want to go to. Well, really, one of the characters really wants to go to, but they're kind of awkward friends. They don't understand the world. They don't understand sex. They don't understand anything. They just curse a lot, and they go through a bunch of wacky hijinks involving drugs and drones and misunderstandings and running through traffic and all kinds of just like crazy things. This is a movie that I laughed a bunch during, but it's not a film that I liked. Like I think it's just a funny movie that I didn't really appreciate much. I think it has a good message, but it's at the very very end. And it was the sort of
Mhm.
message that is the part where I think is like that's Seth Rogen. It's like you're really inserting a kind of heart to this movie, but it really doesn't like grow throughout the movie. It just sort of like lands at the very end, and you're like, oh, so that's what this movie is. So it didn't work for me quite well. The stars here are interesting, but I didn't fall in love with them. Jacob Tremblay from The Room. I think he was also in Predator, the newer
Yeah,
Predator. Uh,
Deep Predator.
great great actor. This kid is going places. Keith L. Williams is in this as well. Hilarious, kind of like can't keep a secret character. Brady Noon, another newcomer who just, I don't know how I feel about that kid necessarily. Like important character, but didn't quite shine for me. And then Molly Gordon, Lil Rel Howery, Will Forte. Some really surprising faces in here. Molly Gordon, you remember from Booksmart, and she's an actress. I remember when that movie came out, I was definitely singing her praises as somebody to watch out
Yeah.
for. Lil Rel from Get Out, of course.
Molly Gordon, she's like her parents are very famous directors, I think. I'll look it up. But she's like Hollywood royalty, I think.
I wouldn't be surprised. When I first saw her, I honestly was like, is she related in some way to Pam from The Office? Like she just looks like a young Jenna Fisher to me. I don't know if that's fair to say,
Uh,
but
well, I might have oversold it, but her parents are both directors. Yeah, Brian Gordon and Jesse Nelson.
yeah,
So
I don't think they're necessarily like super famous.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm oversold them, but I have interviewed Jesse Nelson. She was very nice. But
Oh, no kidding.
yeah, well, she filmed a movie here in Pittsburgh called Love the Coopers, so I got to talk to her about that. But anyway,
Um,
yeah,
Box office wise, film's doing pretty well. Made back its budget. It cost about like 20 million. It's already made 23 million. It's doing well, and I think that it's a little sad to me, just because like, I mean, Booksmart is such a better film. It's just better at like all of this. I think Superbad is much better than this, and I don't want to trash it because there's funny stuff in it, but I'm just bummed that this is the movie that does really well when Booksmart is so much better. What do you think?
I'm not too far off. I'm a little more positive, I'd say. Maybe just because my expectations for this were pretty low, considering that I had seen that trailer, God knows how many times at this point, before like seemingly every movie that was above PG-13. It just like they kept playing it, and the trailer was just like, oh, look at these kids, they're cursing. Oh boy, can you believe it? These 12-year-olds, they're cursing. They're cursed up a storm over here. But the movie, it's not a lot more than that, but I think it's a little better balanced. The beginning of the film is definitely having a hard time trying to find the right amount of wholesome and raunch. But once you get to know the characters and you kind of get to understand what the the premise is, I think it's able to get that balance a lot better. And I do agree with you that I think it is pretty consistently funny in the way that I find most Seth Rogen productions to be. Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg productions to be, because I think they're pretty good about keeping the joke consistent to the point where it's like, even if one joke doesn't land, there's like one 5 seconds later that might be pretty good. So there's not a lot of lull periods in their movies. They're pretty good about keeping them compact with jokes. And I do like this movie is a good 90 minutes flat. It doesn't waste any time. It definitely is pretty good about going at a good clip. But I would say, to your point, yeah, it's probably like the most enjoyable 3 out of 5 star movie I've seen this year. In that I had a good time watching it. I was able to put the world away and just have fun with these characters, but it didn't really stick with me in any particularly meaningful way. Like you said, it's like their third time doing Superbad after Drill Bit Taylor. So it's not really novel in any particular sense, beyond the fact that the kids are preteens. But there is something pretty enjoyable about their chemistry and seeing the world again through their perspective, that the young eyes of the protagonists, where you don't have to worry about mundane adult stuff. There is something to be valued in that, I guess. But yeah, it's just fine. It's enjoyable. It's sweet. I did really enjoy the ending of the film, but yeah, like you said, it's like a solid rental. So it's kind of weird that it's getting one of the few good showings at the theater. But I guess there's something to be said about people just want a good comedy. But at the same time, yeah, I don't know why this comedy in particular is the one that's breaking the mold, as opposed to Booksmart and a couple others that we've seen this summer that aren't doing too well or didn't do too well. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what exactly it is about Good Boys that is inspiring people to really go out to the theaters in a way that most other comedies haven't done this summer.
I think maybe, okay, people want to see a raunchy comedy, and I think the marketing really sold it. It's like, okay, people like Superbad, people like Neighbors. I guess some people like Sausage Party. This movie was a little bit closer in quality, I think, to Neighbors, in the sense that both films are films that I kind of enjoyed while watching them. Never intended to ever watch again. Like, I'm good with this.
Yeah.
I saw it once. I would never recommend it to anyone. I have a hard time grasping who this film is for. Like, who should be watching this? Just because I feel like I was too old for it. Because what these kids are dealing with and what they're struggling with is just so antithesis to my childhood experience, and I think a lot of people's experience. Just because, like, well, first of all, they're just really stupid, and I get that in a sense that can be kind of realistic, but they're stupid for like their generation. Like, these kids don't understand technology in a way that I thought was really baffling. Like, they're trying the whole thrust of their motivation, and that's another thing where, like, on the one hand, I like how the film sets up its stakes. The stakes feel big, but they're low. It's a good setup. There's some good like needle drops and ways that they make the kids like inner lives come full bear on like what's happening on screen. Again, Booksmart did it way better. But in this film, it's still there. It's still kind of funny in parts. But there are just these scenes where these kids are like, they just want to be able to watch people kissing. And their idea to do that is just like, it just doesn't make it like you can tell it was written by people who did not grow up in this generation, because like kids would just Google it, and they do Google it, but like they give up after just typing in porn. And I just like, what kid is that stupid? Like I there's something about it that just really rubbed me the wrong way, of like how stupidly it treats these characters who like they don't understand, they don't get what like sex toys are. Like they don't, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little bit too mean here, but it just felt forced. Like they were writing these kids in a way for the sake of the joke, instead of them feeling like realistic human kids. And so I just never was able to get sucked into this. Like throughout the whole thing, I was just really struggling with why I should care about what they're dealing with until the very end, which again, another sort of like shoehorn message there. So I don't know. The big failure for this movie with me is that you're right. There are enough jokes here that even when they don't land, there's another good one around the corner. There are also some good actors in here who I think are worth looking out for. I didn't mention Midori Francis, who was probably my favorite character in the whole thing. She plays like the teenage friend of Molly Gordon's character, who at one point, like the camera zooms in on her New Balances and she goes on like a chase scene that is just absolutely glorious to watch. But yeah, it's not a film with really much going on in terms of why is this a film people are connecting with? And so I'm a little baffled as well.
Well, I mean, I will give the movie credit in that I don't think, like I said earlier, it's not just swearing. It's not just that for the meat and potatoes. Like there is a story here. There's enough character motivation to make it more than just 90 minutes of kids swearing. But I also feel like it seems like they're kind of going for like the South Park approach, where like the jokes are derived from young kids saying these very adult words. But it feels like with South Park, like the joke was more that like the parenting wasn't really there. Like the parents were often aloof or not involved. So like they had these influences on TV and other things that are, teaching them very adult things at a very young age. But with these kids, they're like suburban kids who are, have pretty dependable lives and parents who are watching out for them. And it seems like they're fairly sheltered. So it never really made sense to me, like why they were often cussing up a storm at several points. Like it seemed like they were like more just kind of well-rounded kids that were told to swear at different points by the producers. I don't know if you felt that way or not. Like maybe if the joke was like they don't like, sometimes it is, but like the joke was like they didn't really know how to use these words, or like they'd heard them but they don't really know what they mean, which is like sometimes a joke for stuff outside of swearing. But
yeah,
I never really got like why the characters, besides it being just like an R-rated raunchy comedy, were swearing as much as they did. It didn't really make sense to me.
Especially the more sheltered kid. I think that's what threw me off, is like, if he's so sheltered, or like if he's so guilty he has to tell the truth constantly, then why does he not really care about profanity? I don't know. It just felt like they're written in a certain way that doesn't fit their characteristics. So that was my main takeaway. The film also overuses a song that I really like, and it's starting to get really annoying to me.
Is it Run the Jewels?
Yeah, it's just
all right. As long as they get money, that's all I care about.
It's just it's overused at this point. I don't know.
Well, technically it's CJ Shadow, but yeah.
Yeah, it was collaboration. I honestly, I'm like between a C+ and a B-. I want to give it. I want to say B-. I want to go there. But the problem is that I think of the movie that I think about that is just better than this one in so many ways is mid-90s. There is a film about kids who are a bit younger, mainly the main one. Like he's like that tween, he's that teenager, and Jonah Hill, surprisingly enough, I think he also had a hand in Good Boys, and I honestly think he did such a better job of like portraying the like that life and like that confusing time while making it funny, but not hilarious. Like it's not a comedy necessarily, but just in a way that it was definitely more affecting, definitely more heartfelt. And I felt like it's a film I do want to watch over and over again. Were you thinking about mid-90s? Is that an unfair comparison, you think?
No, I mean that wasn't the movie I was thinking of while I was watching it, but I can see what you mean. And that movie was very much about like his adolescence, and it felt very true to that time. Like it felt like he put so much care into making it about a specific point in his childhood and what it says that he grew up in that time. And this movie is just about the premise. Basically, it's just like, hey, teens or preteens today, what if they be swearing and, and saying sex jokes? It's just like it's more about the concept than like saying anything or really talking about adolescence in any meaningful way, besides the ending, obviously. But like you said, there is something that feels a little tacked on to the message that makes it nice, but not completely emotionally resonating. But yeah, I wasn't, to answer your question, really thinking about mid 90s all that much.
What about your grade? Where are you at with this?
Yeah, so I'm definitely higher than you were. I was between a B and a B minus because, like you said, I enjoyed it. I had fun. I was definitely entertained throughout the film, and I never felt like it had a low period where I was like, okay, this needs to wrap up. Even though the plot is definitely very hamstringed together in a way that feels like a lot of contrivances are kind of keeping them moving in a somewhat progressive manner. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I like the performances. I like the kids. I think they're charming together. I had some good solid laughs throughout the film, but there is nothing here that feels essential or that would make me want to say like, oh, this is like a good film. It just was a solid comedy that was better than I anticipated, and I had fun watching it. But similar to what you're saying, I don't imagine, unless I see it on TV or something, ever rewatching it or revisiting it. So I'll give it a solid B minus.
Yeah, because like I wouldn't show this to like a 12-year-old. Like that would be like the most irresponsible thing ever. This is that sort of movie. Like 12-year-olds are gonna watch it and be like, "Ooh, they're
Yeah,
gonna
they'll
feel
seek it
cool for
out.
watching it." Yeah,
Yeah.
but then not in theaters because unless they sneak in, right, or drag their
Or
parents
the
and vibe.
parents. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a sort of film. Yeah, I probably would have watched it with like my older brother or something, and and just bending the rules a little bit. But uh, which actually not bending the rules. You can watch an R-rated film with a legal guardian, and my brother was
Mhm.
babysitting me. That's legal, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
before I get myself in some hot water, let's.
Yeah. I was gonna say, do you think though that if, because we talked about this before, either on or off the air, if Booksmart came out the exact same weekend, like if Good Boys didn't come out this weekend, it was Booksmart instead. Do you think it would have made Good Boys money, or do you still think it would have flopped if it came out the time it did, or if it came out in this scenario?
I have to be honest. I think that it probably still would have flopped. And I wonder if it's because I just think there's like a little bit of like a demographic gap here where the people like I guess we just don't see like an appetite from like the demographics. Like dudes are stupid and they don't think book smart is for them. So like the same dudes who would watch Good Boys who should watch Booksmart because it's the better version won't see it because oh no, girls, cooties. You know what I mean? Like it just sort of like feels like Booksmart was always sort of dismissed by half of the viewing audience because the main characters are women and they don't want to see that. They want to see more super bad. They want to see men and everything. And that's me speculating. I don't want to like say that that's 100%
Yeah.
true, evidence, facts, and all that. That's just my sense because
Hmm.
I honestly I don't think Booksmart would have done super well anytime it would have been released. Maybe I'm wrong about that though.
Well, you planted a funny image in my head while you're talking about that, which is like these bro types seeing Booksmart, like playing at the theaters, like Booksmart, books, that's for school. But then they see Good Boys, like boys, that's what Saturdays are for. Let's bring them out. Let's go check this out.
I wonder if the title of Booksmart had something to do with it as well. So if you're out there,
Maybe.
Olivia Wilde, listening and nodding uncontrollably to what we're saying, just want you to know we're on your side, and we're sorry that you have to watch this happen. You deserve better. But that's Good Boys. I think I'm gonna go with uh, really high, really high C plus. You know what? It gets the B minus for being 90 minutes. Let's put it there.
Yeah.
That's
More
settle it.
comedies. Yeah, let's say that right up front. More comedies should be 90
Yeah,
minutes.
actually
If
89
you
minutes. I'm seeing right here.
Oh, nice.
Look at
Even
that.
better. Yeah, I mean, look, I love movies. We talked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I love that movie's basically 3 hours long. I
Yeah.
could watch another hour of that. I'm in the minority about that, but I don't know. Something about these comedies, just like when they go past 2 hours, or if they even go past the 105-minute mark, it's just like cut something out. Like it doesn't need to be this long. If your comedy is 106 minutes, cut a minute out. Like if you pass the 105-minute mark, you're going too long. Something can be on the editing room floor, I feel.
Yeah. We'll get to that, by the way, when you get to Blinded by the Light.
Sure.
Because why do I have some stuff to say about that? Okay. Good Boys. Critics love it. 80% on Rotten Tomatoes out of 150 reviews. That means a ton of critics liked it. And yeah, I guess people ultimately are giving it a pass, I think, because of that short running time and because there is actually a message at the very end. So I don't know. I can see its success being, it makes a little bit of sense. B+ cinema score, not bad for a pretty raunchy film. It's doing okay.
Nobody wants to see Jacob Tremblay cry, so they're like, it was a good movie. Like they don't that kid, he has, like the movie says, he has such sad eyes. Nobody wants to make that kid sad. So it's like,
yeah,
you did good, Jacob Tremblay. Here you go.
That's another thing. One of the things I do appreciate about this movie is they did put a lot of like work into names that are very like, clearly they have like parents who are like way too hipster. Yeah, Thor, Brixley, Soren, Atticus, like it's intense, some of the names in this movie. Well, I did think it was kind of weird though that like their parents were like Will Forte, who's like in his late 40s, which I thought was a little strange. Like they didn't have like very young parents, any of them, except for I guess Lil Rel Howard and Harry and Retta is in this as well, who are hilarious. I thought
that was pretty accurate.
Yeah, that was accurate, yeah, for sure. Also, Andie MacDowell, why was she? What? She was in this movie for like 10 seconds, right?
What?
Andie MacDowell. Yeah,
I know who Andie MacDowell is, but who is she play?
Wasn't she in the movie? She was like she sells the drone.
No, that's what's her name from Casual.
Oh, yeah. Oops.
Yeah. What's her name? Watkins?
Michaela Watkins. Michaela Watkins. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I thought that was Andie MacDowell.
You got me confused because I just saw. I mean, not to spoil anything, but I saw Ready or Not this evening before we did the podcast, and Andie MacDowell is in that movie. So I was like confused. Like, did my brain just slap like those two performances together or something and forget? Right. But then, yeah, you're mixing them up.
You know what? It's because we just watched Margaret Qualley, her daughter, in a movie, and they look pretty similar. I mean,
they do.
It's not that far of a stretch.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, how do you pronounce her name? Michaela Watkins.
Michaela Watkins.
I forgot to mention, I also saw Sword of Trust with her and Mark Maron. That was a solid movie. I'd give that a B-.
Oh, really? Oh, nice little drive-by review. Yeah, that's a movie that I just didn't have time for. But B- sounds kind of interesting.
It's worth a rental.
Yeah. Here's my drive-by. I finally finished Charlie Says. That's a B-. B- is for everybody. It's a good B-. So it's like teetering on a B. I just it just didn't wow me all that much, but I enjoyed it for the most part. Okay.
Right on.
That's Good Boys. Let's move on to a film with a very good boy. What?
No, I'm just laughing because we were just like, oh, by the way, here are 3 mini reviews. All right, next movie.
Yeah. Luce. Luce is a new film directed by Julius Ona, who, when I heard that he was doing a new film, I'll be honest, I was a little nervous. He directed Cloverfield Paradox. He did not write it, though. And that is a film that the Cinemaholics crew universally disliked. But I really like, when I saw the trailer for Luce, I heard that he was writing this, who's producing it. I was on board, and I was like, yeah, this I could tell was like a passion project, and I had the huge benefit to see Luce at a director's Q&A, so I got to hear him answer a few questions. The main actor, Kelvin Harrison Jr. was there as well. And Ingu Kane from Slate was there. So that was really fun. Got to meet her and talk to her for a little bit. So Luce is a fascinating film. In case you haven't seen the trailer, it centers around a high school senior who his name is Luce, but he actually grew up in Eritrea, and he was actually like he was like the kid from Beasts of No Nation, right? He grew up in a war zone. He was like a child soldier, and then when he was about 7-ish years old, a white couple from Arlington, Virginia, basically adopt him. Not basically, they totally adopt him, but in the sense that like it's a long process. They adopt him and then they raise him as their son in the United States. So we meet him as he's become this model student, as his principal says. His principal's like, if you looked up model student, Luce's face would appear. He gives speeches. He's the captain of their track team. He is an amazing debater, extremely, extremely brilliant human being. His parents are played by Naomi Watts and Tim Roth. And the problem is that he has sort of gotten into the crosshairs of one of his teachers, played by Octavia Spencer, who is looking at some of his work that he's producing in a sensing sort of an issue. She has a bit of an issue with his ideology. She gets the sense that he's a bit of a radical. And the movie is more or less a cat and mouse game between these two extremely intelligent and kind of Game of Thronesian characters, in the sense that the scheming and the game that they're playing with each other is very tantalizing. I love this film. This film is tense, and it's dark and gritty, and it's unnerving, and it has something really, really brilliant and depressing to say that I think a lot of people need to see. It was shot on 35 millimeters, so it's beautiful to look at. It's a neon film. It premiered at Sundance, and it was one of the films that I was so sad I didn't get to see there. But after finally getting to see this, it was everything that I wanted and more. The final shot of this movie will stick with me for a long time. I haven't enjoyed the ending of a film this much since probably Assassination Nation. Which I think like the end credits of that movie, if you recall, was just such a cathartic experience. This one's very different, but just as memorable. And Kelvin Harrison Jr., another actor who not really on my radar before this. I remember he was one of the characters in It Comes at Night, a film that you liked that I was kind of with, but It Comes at Night.
Sorry. Oh yeah, It Comes at Night. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and he's had a few, he was actually, now that I think about it, he was in Assassination Nation as well. That's probably why I was thinking about it. But I remember seeing him in Mudbound, and he's been around. But this to me was his breakout role, I hope, because I think a lot of people should check this one out. I don't want to say too much about it, except that seriously, go seek this one out. It is just a fantastic film all around. I don't know if people are going to love it as much as I do necessarily, but to me, in my mind, this film is like the true spiritual successor to Get Out, in the sense where like Get Out had a lot to say about race, mainly through the lens of white liberalism. And that's something that I think gets lost in conversations about, oh, this film's like Get Out. It's like, it's not really about Get Out. It's just, it has a black filmmaker and it has something to say about society. That doesn't make it like Get Out. But this film definitely, I think, shares way more DNA with what Jordan Peele was getting at with his film, except that it's way more down to earth. It's way more grounded. This isn't a film that is necessarily like, it's not like Get Out. It's not like a horror sort of comedy sort of thing. It doesn't have a premise along those lines, but it does have that mentality. It has that that seriousness, that sort of like really, it has things on its mind that you don't want to think about, but you should. So especially in a movie where Us has been like the actual film that Jordan Peele has followed up Get Out with, I think this one deserves to be seen through that lens as an important film, as one that is political in ways that are just so much more challenging and countercultural. And when I say countercultural, I really mean in all senses, like counter to all the cultures. Like Luce doesn't fit into a box. It's not a film that's going to be championed by a group of people who have any sort of agenda. They're going to watch this film and come away at it and want to talk about it endlessly, which has been the case for me. And sadly, I don't know anybody who's seen this film. except for me and Ingu Kang. And I really want you to see it soon, Will, because I need to talk about this film with somebody. I am chomping at the bit to discuss it. Julius Ona wrote the screenplay along with J.C. Lee. It's a lean movie. I know you said they all got to be 105. Well, the comedies do. This is 109, not a minute too long, not a minute too short. And it's gonna be rolling out into more theaters. I hope. Right now, it hasn't really made much money because it's playing in just a handful of places. But as this rolls out, I would love to talk more about this film, maybe on an indie panel episode with some of y'all. I can't stop thinking about it. This is an A film for me. This is one of my top films of the year. For that reason, it's probably my number 3, number 4 film of 2019, and I think everyone needs to see it. Even if you don't like it, I think you're going to get something out of it that you will appreciate. This is why we go to the movies, people. We go for movies like Luce. And Will Ashton, I can't wait to hear about how you think the film is about. B or B minus.
No, I am very curious about this film because I saw the trailer before Wild Rose, and I had heard about it from you, like the title and stuff, but I didn't really know what it was about until I saw the trailer, and I was like, oh, this is very, very intriguing, and I didn't know when it was coming out. So I'm glad to see that it's good, and I'll keep an eye out for if it's coming out near me. But I keep getting this film mixed up with a different film that came out that I did see called Lux, which is a like Galo horror film that I really enjoyed. That was shot on 16 millimeter as well. So I would give that film a solid B plus. That's another drive-by review.
I love this. I love how you're squeezing these reviews, and I love it. Keep it coming.
Sorry, Lutz, Luz. So
yeah.
not Lux, Lutz.
Not Lux, not Vox Lux.
Yeah. No, if only. Yeah, Lutz. I would give that a solid B plus if you're looking for a fun horror movie. And that movie, do you want to guess how long it is, John?
Let me guess. 105 minutes.
Nope. 70 minutes.
Wow, that is a short movie. There's only been like, I think I've only seen 1 or 2 movies this year that have been that short.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a fun time that's only about an hour long, check out Lutz. But I will be on the lookout for Lutz as well. Or Luce?
Luce, yeah, not Lutz. It's Luce. On the loose. Hopefully soon. 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics like it as well, and I think that it's definitely worth checking out if you have any sort of interest in that format. Yeah, that like 35 millimeter grainy cinematography. That was probably my favorite part of it. Yeah. Especially movies like, it wasn't even shot in Virginia, but oh man, they just nailed what Virginia is like. I think it was shot in New York, but still. But yeah. All right.
Also, Cloverfield Paradox was also shot on film, I should note.
Wow, I didn't even notice. You know why? Because I saw it on Netflix. I saw it on like a phone. I saw it on my phone. I didn't. Yeah, I was at the airport and I saw that film. I didn't. Anyway, Peanut Butter Falcon. That's our next film. You saw this. I really want to see it. This is Shia LaBeouf's year, and I'm failing him by missing this one. But I know it premiered at South by Southwest this past March. I don't know anything. Like, I've avoided all reviews for it, so you're going to be the first person I get any sort of sense of how this movie is from. But yeah, tell us all about it. What is this movie? Who made it? And why should we care?
Yeah, so Peanut Butter Falcon is one of the indie darlings of the year. It's the directorial debut of Tyler Nielsen and Michael Schwartz. This is a film that's kind of like, I've described it as like a Huck Finn story, kind of told in the style of Lord of the Flies meets Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The story is centered around a young man with Down syndrome who is currently tied up into this southern retirement home where he's really just not digging it. The people are there and nice, but he feels very contained, and he's frustrated by that. And he has all these tapes of a wrestler called the something like Saltwater. Oh, what's the name? I have to remember. Oh, the Saltwater Redneck, played by Thomas Hayden Church. And he's trying to go to his wrestling school, which is a little ways away. And eventually he breaks out of the retirement home and runs into Shia LaBeouf, who is a fisherman who has a dark past, who's just trying to escape his troubles in a way that he hasn't really been able to successfully. And something or another happens where they both find themselves on the run, going in different destinations, but in a similar region. So they find themselves kind of teaming up to hopefully meet their own personal destinations of choice. But in the process, they form this kind of brotherly slash buddy relationship that is really tender and sweet, and it results in, I think, one of the better surprises of the year for me. It's a film that it definitely hits a lot of check marks when you see as far as the like kind of feel good indie approach. Like there's a lot of like kind of things that might annoy people as far as its style and tendency, but it's just so darn sweet, and it's really really well done as far as the acting is concerned, especially from our two leads, Shia LaBeouf and the newcomer named Zach Gottsagen, Gottsagen.
Yeah, I
They're
think it's
just really
pronounced
both.
Zach Gottsagen.
Okay, there you go. Zach Zagen.
Gottsagen.
Okay, if you guys
It's
haven't learned by now,
it's okay. Well,
yeah,
we love you for your film opinions, your
yeah,
pronunciations as well.
sure. But the most incredible thing about this movie, I should also note that in addition to the names I mentioned, it also stars Dakota Johnson, who's also great in this, and Bruce Stern, and another big name I'm blanking. Oh, Jonathan Hawks. But the budget of the film is $20,000, which, if you don't know, $20,000 is like the catering budget for most movies, or maybe not as much as that, but it's like a very very low amount of money. And if you watch the film, it looks like at least $2 million. Like I am legit shocked that the movie was able to be made on this low of budget, and look as good as it does. But I think it's primarily because not only most of the movie shot in kind of deserted um, desert like areas. So I'm guessing they didn't have to worry about film permits and stuff like that. But it seems like everyone involved is really committed to just making this film as good as possible. Mainly just because I think they believe in the material so well, and they want to help this young actor. Zach, how you pronounce his name? Godin?
Gottsagen.
Zagen. There we go. I'll probably get it right by the end of the review. Um, who is tremendous in the film as well. But if you don't know, because I think you brought up Honey Boy, right? That's the other film from Shia LaBeouf this year,
I
which
didn't
is
bring it
kind
up
of
by
like,
name, but
okay,
yeah, a wonderful movie. A movie I really
yeah.
like, and I hope Shia LaBeouf gets some Oscar attention for his performance in that one.
Well, the thing about that that's interesting is that this movie was shot 2 years ago in 2017, and I think what's probably most noteworthy is if you remember his arrest in 2017 in Georgia. That I think that's actually in the film because there's a scene in a trailer I saw where they like recreate that
Huh.
incident. Yeah, I believe in Honey Boy. I mean, that was happening during production on this film, and it was actually through his relationship with Zach that because like when he came back, like everyone was kind of like skirting the topic, but Zach is such like a straight shooter in his own words that he was just like directly asking Shia like why is he trying to sabotage his career and stuff like that, and they had like a 20-minute conversation on like a dance floor or something, and they just kind of talked it out, and apparently it was through Zach that because they formed a very tight relationship that he finally felt the need to get clean and stay sober. And when he was in rehab, I believe after he finished production on this movie, that's where he wrote Honey Boy. So it was through this movie that we eventually got Honey Boy, and I think you can kind of tell because you can tell Shia LaBeouf, it's one of his best performances. His heart's really in this thing, and it really I think captures what has really impressed me about Shia LaBeouf in recent years, which is that I think in so many ways, like when he is in the movie, like he feels like super into a project in a way that has this like intensity and this immediacy that I think a lot of actors wish they could have and they never quite do. But he feels like very natural and organic as well. And I think that humbleness and that dedication is really apparent in his like kind of go get him relationship with Zach. And it just feels so warm and tender. And especially as you get to know the characters and like them more and more, that it really resonates well. And I think it's easily going to be a crowd pleaser. So I'm going to give this a warm, solid B. I was between a B plus and a B, but I think it kind of hits a lot of cliches that get a little frustrating because you can tell that there's a really, really solid film in here that is on the verge of being great. But I think it just sells for being pretty darn good. But I can't imagine many people being disappointed or not having a good time with this film. So I hope if you get a chance, Sean, you check it out.
Yeah, well, pretty darn good sounds good enough to me. I'm looking at this for I'm looking at this for the first time, and it says here the film holds an approval rating of 97% on Rotten Tomatoes out of 63 reviews. So critics are definitely liking it plenty, and its cinema score is an A plus. So kind of fascinating. I mean, grain of salt because I think that it hasn't been in a lot of theaters, so the cinema score polling is probably pretty limited. But yeah, we don't see A plus very often, and yeah, I'm happy to hear that this is one worth seeking out. I think it is playing in my area, so I'll add it to the list of films I don't have time to watch.
Sure. But I do think it is, I mean, if listeners are interested, I do believe it's getting a fairly wide release, wider than I was originally anticipating. So it might be playing in your area pretty soon. Not you specifically, I mean the listeners, but yeah. So it's definitely one I think that if you have a chance to see it and it's playing near you, I would definitely check it out.
All right, well, moving right along, we also have Blinded by the Light. This is a British comedy drama. It's directed by Gurinder Chata. How familiar are you with her work? I know she did Bride and Prejudice. She did Viceroy's House, and I think her big movie. Oh yeah, Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging was. I remember watching that. Bend It Like Beckham. I think that was probably her biggest movie. I want to say.
I haven't seen any of these.
You didn't see Bend It Like Beckham.
I've heard of all these films. I think. Well, not all of them, but I've heard of a couple of these.
I honestly, if you were going to watch any of them, I think Bend It Like Beckham is one to check out.
Yeah, sure. I've heard that's really good.
It's a pretty good movie. It's not my favorite in the world or anything like that. I saw it on a plane when I was like a kid. Not a kid, but you know what I mean. But yeah, it's just a very charming British film. Well, she's back. I haven't seen anything new from her in quite a while. But Blinded by the Light is her new film. This is it's based on a memoir by someone named Sarfraz Manzoor, who is Pakistani, grew up in the UK in the 80s, and he wrote a memoir called Greetings from Berry Park, Race, Religion, and Rock and Roll. And his whole story is that he grew up in the United Kingdom dealing with a lot of racism. He had a very tough family life. His father, tried to make all of his decisions for him, didn't have a lot of agency. And during his time in, I believe I forget what they call it. It's like a different sort of like high school. They call it college, but it's like a secondary school. He discovers Bruce Springsteen through one of his, not even a friend of his, like a random stranger he befriends. And he finds out that like Bruce Springsteen, this Americana rock star who has already seen who's already seen like a ton of fame in like the early 80s. This movie takes place in 1987, the year my sister was born. And he falls in love with this guy whose music just really jives with what he's feeling. And so like all of these things that our main character named Javed wants in life, he wants to kiss a girl. He wants to write poetry. He wants to be a successful writer. He wants to break out of his family life and make his own decisions. And he finds a kindred spirit in this American artist. And that's the main idea for the movie. And this is why I was excited about this movie, because I think that's a really cool idea. And I think that's a really powerful story to look out for. Our main actor here is, and I'm probably going to get some of these pronunciations wrong, so I apologize, but Vivek Kalra, Kulvinder Greer, Mira Ganatra, Nell Williams, Aaron Figura, and then we have some other actors, like you'll recognize Dean Charles Chapman. He plays Tommen in Game of Thrones. And probably the biggest name in this movie is Haley Atwell, who, I'm just going to say this right now, too good for this film. Definitely not something I expected to see, because this isn't really this film. She's above this film, I want to say, and that's both me praising Haley Atwell and me kind of looking down on this movie, unfortunately. And I'm so sad. Will, this is not a good film, in my opinion. This film, I don't know what went wrong here, because Gurinder Chadha is a very talented filmmaker, and I just don't get it. She makes mistakes in this film that it honestly, I came across somebody else who's sort of was saying this, and I resonated with it. It feels like a student film. That's how sloppy a lot of this filmmaking is. And my main suspicion is that there was a much longer cut, and this is already a pretty long film, 117 minutes. 117 minutes of a dude listening to Bruce Springsteen. If that's what you want, you're gonna get it, and you probably like it fine. I'm not a Bruce Springsteen fan. I don't know how you feel about him. I don't dislike him. I respect, appreciate the boss, as people like to refer to him. I think a lot of his music's pretty good. I like Born to Run, like basically everybody else. But his music's never been something that I've connected to. So I watched this movie fresh. I watched it with a perspective of, I want to fall in love with Bruce Springsteen. I want to see this movie and I want to get it. Like, I want to get what makes him such an appealing artist to so many people and why he means so much to them. And the movie tries to do that. It's like its main objective. But this is a movie with way too many side characters. It's a movie that jumps around from subplot to subplot in search of a main plot. And it's just galling, because you can just sense that they cut a lot of things out, but they didn't have the sense to cut out things that would bring focus to the film. They basically, here's the analogy. You can have a main plot and 7 subplots, and then you cut out 4 of those 7 subplots so that it's tighter, and the main plot still has a lot of power to it. But what they did was they just cut a lot from everything. They cut a lot from every subplot and the main plot. So what you get is this like ragtag, loosey-goosey, sort of illogical film for the most part that has a good message, but it's just so repetitive, and it's filled with characters saying and doing things that don't make a lot of sense. There are musical numbers in this film that you can't tell if they're diegetic, and they go on for way too long. You have a lot of replaying of Bruce Springsteen songs, which, don't get me wrong, I like most of them, but they play the same songs over and over again. Like, they couldn't afford the rights to multiple songs. So like, there were just so many weird filmmaking choices here. I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to do Born to Run twice, Will, and they're not going to do it twice, like 30 seconds a piece. They do the whole song through twice. And I'm like, is this a music video or a movie? And it needs to make a decision. And I was so frustrated with this movie because it could have been so much better. And I think the core problem with this film, I mean, there are a lot of little problems. Like, I think the main love interest in here is, she's played by Nell Williams, and she's very charming. There's good chemistry, but she's really tossed to the side in a major way and then becomes such a trope eventually. But honestly, the main thing is the father-son dynamic here is so unbelievable, and it just rings false. Like, it rings as a sort of thing that it just feels manufactured for the sake of drama. The father character is an immensely unlikable character. He is just mean-spirited. He's very unpleasant, and the film goes back to him constantly. And that is like most of this film, and I'm just like, please move on. I care more about the relationship between him and his friend Matt, who disappears like for a majority of the film. I care more about his relationship with his teacher, who is very weird. Like, Haley Atwell plays a teacher who is way too hands-on with her students. It was very strange.
Uh-oh.
Like, she just does, and I don't even mean it like that. She does things for him, like enters him in competitions and like without his permission. And it's just like doing all of these. She's like paying really special attention to him in a way that feels very strange. And again, it's stuff that I have a feeling that if I read the memoir, it would be so different, because they don't even say based on a true story in the beginning. They say inspired by a true story. And yeah, just every flair to this film, every detail feels sloppy. All the filmmaking involved here is just very pedestrian at best. And it's just baffling, because this is not a pedestrian filmmaker. I was so sad walking out of this movie, because I wanted it to be a really good blueprint for biopics that can be a little bit off the beaten path. Like, you can have a Bruce Springsteen movie without telling the story of his life. I don't think Springsteen has like a life that's all that interesting to put to film, that's at least unique from other artists. So like, I thought this was a really clever way to get at that. We'll see. He has his documentary thing coming out that he co-directed later this year, which I don't know. I feel like that's more about his new music more than anything else, and he's definitely an
Well,
interesting artist. But yeah, a biopic along the lines of like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man and Walk the Line, I don't really see that.
I mean, I did hear that his memoir, Born to Run, is really good, but I can
Oh, I
see what
haven't
you
read
mean.
it.
It's supposed to be quite good.
Yeah, I would hope it would translate to the big screen, but yeah, I'm not sure. I have a feeling it would be immensely more interesting than Blinded by the Light, which I could go all day about it. There's just so much about it that doesn't make sense, that doesn't add up, and it's one of those films, especially like with the more you think about it, it just really falls apart. Now, maybe I'm the minority here. In fact, I know I am. At 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, like people like this film. A minus cinema score. I find it baffling. Like I don't get it. Like this film frustrated the hell out of me, and I'm glad people like it, but I just don't get it. Like it I'm exasperated just thinking about how much this film let me down, and I didn't even have like huge expectations for it. In a sense that I felt like I could be let down in a big way, but again, this is another film that I am interested in one of you cinemaholics listening to it, just so I can get some other second opinions, because I definitely I want to know if it's just me, if there's something I'm missing about it.
Yeah, I have heard generally kind of mixed things, but it seems like the people who are positive on the film are really positive, like through the roof positive on it in a way that surprised me. Just because when I saw a trailer, it was another film I guess before Wild Rose. I just was exposed to a lot of big trailers. Yeah, I saw this for the trailer for this for the first time, and it looked very very hokey and cliched in a way that was like, oh no. But if I do check it out, I'll probably see it with my dad, who's a big Bruce Springsteen fan. I'm curious, but yeah, hearing what you said is seemingly confirming a lot of the things I was worried about when I heard about this project and saw the trailer. So we'll see. I mean, I'm curious still, but yeah, it's discouraging to hear it from you.
I'm a C on this one. It's not all bad. Like it's not I mean, it's bad, but like there are things in it that are good that I think people are responding to, and I don't want to make it out to be like the performances are terrible, because a lot of them aren't. I think a lot of the dialogue is a little weird, but there are some choices in here that I think are interesting, and I can see people watching this movie and finding it to be a breezy thing. So yeah, a C feels about right, even though I felt kind of miserable after watching it, and even during, I kept just getting sucked out of the movie because of its weird filmmaking decisions. But that's Blinded by the Light. It's been a kind of a crazy week where nothing's really standing out to me in terms of films. I think Good Boys we kind of chose the main review just because, that's the film we both saw. So I guess that tells you a little something. But we have one last film to get to, a Netflix film. This is called Sextuplets, and this is a film I've heard a lot about, very negatively, but not even from people who've seen it. I don't know anybody who's seen it except for you, Will Ashen. So I
Sure.
want to know, what in the world is this Marlon Wayans film, and yeah, help us out. Like, what is this movie, Will?
Yeah, so this is the, I believe, second film Marlon Wayans has made with Netflix. The first one I didn't see, but it was called Naked, and it kind of just came and went, I guess. Didn't really hear a lot of chatter about it. I kind of forgot it existed. But this one, yeah, it got a lot of negative press because it seemed like Marlon Wayans was just kind of trying a little too hard to go for like the Nutty Professor to the Clumps kind of thing, where he was like playing like a whole family on screen. It was going to just be him basically riffing with himself. And I'll just say up front, I've never been a super big fan of Marlon Wayans comedy outside of like In Living Color, which I do really enjoy. A lot of the movies he's done, maybe except the scary movies, haven't really done it for me. But when I was listening to a radio interview I heard earlier this year, where he was talking about LaQuisha, which is a movie I reviewed on the show, he provided, I would say, arguably the best and one of the funniest and most pointed examinations of that film, and explaining on like a fundamental level why that movie doesn't work as a comedy, and why when you do stuff as a comedian, like certain stuff you can touch on as far as like kind of taboo topics in today's climate, like how you can approach them in a way that reaches the audience while not offending them at the same time. And it was a very interesting conversation from a comedian who's clearly, working in the past 20 or 30 years. So it was just, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt with this movie, even though I didn't expect it to be good. I was like, maybe I could see what he was talking about, because he talked about in the interview of this movie a lot of times where he was just like, oh, with Sextuplets, I do it better because so and so. And I was like, I don't know about that, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Marlon Wayans, and see this movie since it's available on Netflix. I don't have to go anywhere to watch it. I can just press play and see what happens. And it's it's so bad. It is even worse than I think you can anticipate. And it's not even that it's like an interesting bad or it's like a so bad it's good kind of film. It's just boring, really, because I don't know. It's just Marlon Wayans contradicting everything he said so eloquently in that interview that I was talking about, where the whole comedy is so aggravatingly shallow. Every character he plays is just a blank stereotype, basically, with the exception of like the main character, who I guess is supposed to be the quote unquote normal one, just because it's just typical Marlon Wayans. Like he plays an obese, kind of sheltered guy who may or may not be autistic, which annoyed me. If he was supposed to be a stereotypical autistic character, named Russell, he has a sister who's a stereotype of a like impoverished black woman. He has another character who's like a 70s pimp. And I should say the premise is that they're all sextuplets, as the title suggests. So he finds out that he has all these siblings and he tries to round them up or something. I don't care. But yeah, it's just Marlon Wayans basically riffing with himself. And there's no material here. There's nothing that's really funny or interesting, or he's not saying anything. It's just him basically showing off, playing all these different characters through heavy makeup and prosthetics, which the makeup and prosthetics, none of them are really super believable, but they're not bad. Like, I mean, they do a decent job of highlighting Marlon Wayans, but at the same time, when you think about that and like all the different special effects that went into what I essentially consider a vanity project for Marlon Wayans to just do half-ass sketch comedy characters, it just feels so depressing that clearly Marlon Wayans knows a lot about comedy and knows what makes it work, but his work just contradicts that every single time. And it seems like his movies are just like spitefully not trying. And that's not to say that he, is actually lazy about it, because I don't know. Maybe he really puts a lot of effort and time into it, but it just doesn't show. I mean, it's just annoying because, like, when you look at something like LaQuisha, obviously Jeremy Seville is just a disillusioned hack. Like, he just doesn't know better, I think. I hope. But it's Marlon Wayans, like, that interview made clear that he knows better than this. He can do better. And we've seen, like, performances like him in Requiem for a Dream where he's really good and he can be a very talented actor. But this is, like, the lowest of the low. Like, this is Jack and Jill level bad for him. And it's just frustrating and sad to see a comedian at the midpoint of their career just basically selling it, wasting millions of dollars on Netflix money just to validate his own sense of half-ass comedy. And it just made me depressed in a way that I hadn't felt since 2 months ago when I watched a Medea family funeral, where I felt similar feelings about Tyler Perry, where he was just basically selling it, playing a bunch of characters at once. And clearly he just doesn't really care. He just knows that people are going to see it. And I got the same sense from Marlon Wayans. He just knows that people, his fans are going to watch it. And if they like it, they don't. It doesn't really seem to matter to him. And he's not challenging himself. He's not really trying to do anything interesting with his art. He's just making a movie because he can, I guess. And it's, I don't think that was intent, but that's how I felt watching it. And it just felt like a total nothing burger of a movie. And I was pretty bummed and annoyed by it. And there's a point in the film that pretty much described the whole experience of watching this film, which is he literally steps in bullshit. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to swear. He literally steps in crap and, sorry, you can edit that out. Literally steps in crap and then just makes a whole stink about it. And that's how I felt watching the movie. I don't know. It's like a D+.
Here's the thing that confuses me. Marlon Wayans, how big is his fan base? Because I've never gotten a sense that people like seek out his movies necessarily. I mean, maybe they did in like the 2000s, like the early 2000s.
Mostly in the 90s.
Yeah, so that's probably like his peak, right? With like the scary movie stuff. But I just wonder.
And White Chicks, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good kind of a marker for like when he just really had like it just felt like he was like very culturally relevant. But right now, I mean, is there a big Marlon Wayans? Like, are there Marlon Wayans fans who are just like waiting, chomping at the bit for his next project? And if so, that would be a surprise to me. I've just never gotten a sense of that fan base, and that just might be, you know, my own limited, my own
Yeah.
limitations.
I don't know. I mean, A Haunted House, the first one did really well, especially for a low budget comedy. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
that
a
was
while
only
ago, wasn't it?
like 2013, so a little while ago, but not like terribly long ago.
Hmm.
So I guess I mean, if Netflix is making more than one movie with him, apparently there's an audience. I guess I would guess that there would be
Yeah, like a
somebody watching these.
like an
I
Adam
watched it.
Sandler, like an Adam Sandler kind of audience, you know, like
Yeah.
stealth love for this comedian, I guess. But okay, that's Sextuplets. It's a D plus from Will Ashton, and I'm not sure where that plus came from, but
Yeah, you know what? You're right. Yeah, I'm gonna give it just a straight
oh,
D or D
geez.
minus.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk you down. But okay, that'll do it this for this week's episode of Cinemaholics. Really a long episode, a lot to cover though, and I'm glad we were able to catch our breath on a lot of these films, including the newer ones we saw. And that we didn't even talk about everything that we've seen. We're saving some stuff for next week because next week is a little bit more of a shallow week in terms of like film releases. Not that there isn't stuff coming out, just that not a lot of stuff we'll probably be able to catch. So first of all, definitely want to talk about Mindhunter season 2 next week. I'm almost done with that season, so I'll probably talk about it a little bit next week if we have the time. Also, The Boys, which you and I have not You and I have not talked about together yet. I think I briefly mentioned it in our Hobbs and Shaw episode, but I didn't
We
go into
talked
any
about
sort of detail.
We talked about The Boys, The Good Boys.
Oh boy.
There
Boy
you
Story. Yeah, so hopefully you and I can talk about that because I know you've seen at least the pilot. I don't know if you kept watching, but I hope you did.
go. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a no. So, but
Yeah.
on top of that, I think Ready or Not is the film that I'm most excited to talk about. You saw it tonight. You're not giving anything away on what you think yet, but we'll hopefully do a whole review on that. Angel Has Fallen. I don't really plan on seeing it. I've only seen the first one, Olympus Has Fallen. Never saw the second, so I don't know. Are you going to catch it?
I can't imagine I will. Though I am amused that when I was in the theater for Ready or Not, someone called this movie Fallen Angel, and it took me like 2 minutes to figure out they were talking about Angel Has Fallen.
Oh, man.
So I feel like the movie Fallen Angel sounds way more interesting than whatever Angel Has Fallen is going to end up being. So
Well, it'll definitely be the widest release. I mean, it's going to be in over 3,000 theaters. Ready or Not is not limited release, but I mean, it's like 2,300.
widest. I thought you said the whitest release.
Not
And I was like, yeah,
whitest.
that's true.
The wider. Well, there is
Yeah.
Brittany Runs a Marathon, but that's a limited release. And there's another film coming out called Overcomer. This is like a kind of like one of those like Pure Flix things. Well, it's not Pure Flix, it's Affirm Films, but it's like the same kind of vibe. But it's like the way I can describe it is because I did see the trailer. It's like the biggest problem for a white football coach in like, you know, red state America is that he has to teach cross country or he has to coach cross country instead. And it's treated like this super dramatic thing where he's like, I can't do cross country. I'm a football coach.
Oh man.
How's
he going to overcome that one?
That's literally, I was laughing so much at this trailer. But yeah, there is Brittany Runs a Marathon, which premiered at Sundance, and I really wanted to see it. I don't know if I'll be able to catch it on limited release. It's Amazon Studios, so it'll hit that streaming service eventually. But this looks like kind of a funny thing to see. It's hour 45 minutes. It's what I forget her name from Workaholics.
Jillian
is
Bell.
the star. Yes, thank you. R-rated film. It looks like it has some bite to it. I was sad that I couldn't see it at Sundance. So hopefully its limited release is going to be at least accessible to some of us. And then there's also Fiddler, a Miracle of Miracles, which is a new documentary from Roadside Attractions. We're definitely not limited on films, but it's mostly limited releases. This past week was like just all of the wide releases came out. So I think we have a pretty good handle on what we'll talk about next week for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's probably going to be another hodgepodge episode, and that we'll both probably see Ready or Not, and then who knows what else we'll talk about. But
I think
we
that'll
got
be
some
the
stuff in the
focus.
lineup. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, I won't know exactly what I'll talk about, but we'll find out when we get there.
Yeah. But all right, until then, thank you as always for listening. All the links to stuff for like our social media, our email, our Patreon, all that's in the show notes. You can also find both of us on Twitter. I am at John Negroni. Will Ashton is at The Will of Ash. Find more of our stuff on cinemaholics.com as well. And until next week, we will see you from the Internet California. I am John Negroni.
For the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Wash.
See you next time.